Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the South Point Studios for this year's edition of the PGA Golf Show. Hi, everybody. I'm Barry Phillips. Joining me, CJ Schmid, PGA professional. Did the Masters. A pretty good run on the Masters show. CJ, I brought you back. Give out some winners today, I hope.
I'm glad I made the cut.
Yeah. Well, it's at Valhalla Country Club in Kentucky. Beautiful, beautiful track. Valhalla has hosted 4 PGA Championships now. This will be the 4th. One of the first ones being won by Tiger in 2000. You remember that epic battle with Bob May? I don't know, were you alive in 2000?
You know, it's hard to believe, but I was alive during that, and that was actually one of the golf tournaments I watched, and that was a big reason why I love golf.
Yeah,
was
Bob
that epic tournament.
Bob May, a local Las Vegas guy, took him to extra holes, and it's still kind of controversial. I don't know if you ever watch any of those things on Golf Channel when they show the Valhalla playoff with Bob May, but if you don't recall, Tiger hit a ball into a bush, and the ball miraculously just came bouncing back out into a wide open lie, and Tiger ended up making par on that hole. And that's the one where Tiger kind of walked off a birdie on one. And I mean, that was a great, great turn. Bob May played his butt off, but ultimately lost to Tiger. Bob says, I had dinner with him a few years ago, and he said, to that day, which was 5-7 years ago, he still was getting letters back from people that said somebody threw that ball out from the bush, but not going to change it now.
Yeah.
But Tiger won there, and Rory won there.
Yes.
Rory won in 2014. So the big difference between the PGA and the Masters is the PGA rotates golf courses like the U.S. Open and the British Open. The Masters is the same course every single year, and there's kind of horses for courses, so you can kind of tell, for the most part, who you think's going to be on the leaderboard at the Masters. But the PGA is a different story. A lot of surprise winners have come out of the PGA, including John Daly in 1991.
Yeah.
He was the last guy in the field. In fact, he was an alternate to get in, and he won. Another guy, Rich Beam, won at the PGA. Phil won when he was 50 years old. So a lot of crazy things have happened at the PGA over the years.
Yeah, the PGA is definitely one of those. It's one of those majors that we always kind of circle, not necessarily like the Masters where you love seeing Augusta or you love seeing the U.S. Open because, you know, there's local qualifiers and anybody can get in. The PGA has just got that special little gleam to it, if you will, that it's interesting to kind of see what happens each and every year. You mentioned the Phil come back at 50, you know, John Daly, big names have come out. I mean, you can even go back to Jimmy Walker when he won it 8 years ago.
Right. He got hot for like 1 year,
yeah.
Jimmy Walker, remember?
You know, Jimmy Walker, the year Jason Day, we all thought he was going to be the next big thing again. So
yeah. Jason Day won by the largest margin ever. He got to 20 under, and that's when he was on fire. And before he started coming down with the vertigo that has affected his game so badly. But the PGA Championship, Shawn Michaels won it, a guy you've never heard from again. And Rich Beam won. He got a hole-in-one when he won it, and he won a BMW. I still remember him jumping up on the hood of that car. And he played in what was called the Reno Tahoe Open at the time when I was living in Reno. And he drove that car to the golf tournament. And we were talking to him about it because we did a little pro-am thing with him.
That's cool.
He was pretty famous for a few years. He had a good little run there. He was on the Golf Channel for a couple of years. Interesting. Well, that's the story. It's at Valhalla, which is a great golf course. It's the backyard of Justin Thomas. A lot of pressure on Justin to try and win at home, and he's kind of having an interesting year, and we're going to talk about him a little bit. But we got to talk about the big dogs in the field, right? You got
Absolutely.
5 guys that are in this thing that are, you know, playing fantastic golf right now. It's unbelievable play by Scotty Scheffler. Scheffler's playing great. He's coming off of 2 wins in a row and 4 out of his last 5. Rory won last week. He's won 2 in a row. Yep. So you never know what's going to happen with Rory. He's always going to be one of the favorites coming into it. Also, really at the top of the hill, John Rahm. What's going to happen with John Rahm? Since he's gone to the LIV, he has not won, but he's everybody's, you know, one of their favorite picks. He's such a strong player. Xander Schauffele is in that top group again. Xander finished second last week to Rory at the Wells Fargo. So it's just an amazing field. 100 players. You get some of the guys that won there that get to play in the field. As we mentioned, John Daly's in the field and Vijay Singh's in the field. But for the most part, this is the strongest field of any of the majors, or of the 4 majors anyway. The Open has qualifying. The U.S. Open has qualifying. The Masters is invited. A lot of amateurs are in the Masters. But this is a super strong field with 100 players in it.
Yep. Yeah, and you just mentioned it right there. This is the one really big major where, you know, there's invites, there's qualifiers, everything like that. Instead of amateurs, they replace it with, you know, around 20 PGA professionals. So we got people that are directors of instruction, head golf pros, directors of golf, you know, people that work in club companies, So there's not a whole lot of amateur golf. Not to say that they're not bad; they're phenomenal golfers either way. But just the field is a lot more different in the PGA Championship.
Well, last year the PGA Pro out of L.A. made a big run at it, right?
Yep.
Before
Michael Black.
Michael Black, and he actually just won on the senior tour a few weeks ago. So he's playing some golf, but he was there.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at the sheets, starting off with Scotty Scheffler is at 7-2. John Rahm is at 12. Rory opened at 15 after last week. He was bet down to 6 now. Ludwig Ahlberg, who you loved at the Masters, finished second at the Masters.
Yep.
You just missed a cash out there. He opened at 15. He's been no action. He's now at 20-1.
Mm-hmm.
And Xander has been steady at 15. Brooks Koepka, a name I'm throwing out for the first time tonight, Mr. PGA. The guy's won 3 PGA events.
Mm-hmm.
Last year won it, played some fantastic golf. The guy's defending champ. He opened at 20-1. He's been bet down to 12-1. He won last week on the Live, so he may be rounding into shape.
Mm-hmm.
And at 12-1, there's some value there. So let's start.
Huge value. We'll start with Brooks Koepka. I think that's one of the best value picks right there. I know it's, still kind of in that weird, not favorite, but not getting a huge bang for your buck at 12-1. But that's going to be somebody that, you're right, he just won off Live. He's hot. When it comes to the PGA Championship, he just has those courses dialed in. And I think and we'll talk about it more later too, but he's one of my players. And, I'm a big PGA Tour guy, but I'd be shocked if Koepka wasn't at least top 5 contention.
Yeah, at 12-1, you're still tremendous amount of value. Open at 20, 12 now after winning. I called him Mr. PGA because he just loves tough golf courses. Mm-hmm. He went to the Live, and he was one of those guys that kind of was vocal about it, that, hey, I got a lot of money to play golf. I'm not going to play as much golf. Mm-hmm. I think what the benefit of the Live has been for Brooks Koepka is he had that very serious knee injury. He had a torn patella tendon, which I actually experienced. I had 7 knee surgeries in 9 months.
What?
And still haven't recovered. It's been 3 years I haven't recovered from it. So that happened to him in 19. Then he had another follow-up surgery in 21. So by only playing, 8 or 10 times, he had time to pretty much let that knee heal. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why he played so strong last year. Although I just don't know. I mean, you get that check. We've seen with John Rahm. John Rahm reportedly got $300 million. We'll talk about him next. Mm-hmm. And since he's got the big check from the Live, he has not won. He won the Masters and hasn't even won in limited fields on the Live Tour. Mm-hmm. I got to think he's not happy that he went to the Live and just lost like all the mojo that he had being number 1 in the world and all the great stuff. But, he's a great player and he could show up on the leaderboard for sure. If we take a look at him, he's at 12-1, stayed at 12-1, and he's at 12-1 today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think the key word that you just said there was mojo, right? I'm sure he's happy with his bank account, but in terms, as athletes, as we all are, especially in golf where it's just so competitive and you're playing against yourself, other people, the course, and there's all these factors and everything, John Rahm's got to be the most disappointed, not necessarily at his game, because he's still playing at a high level, but like you said, he was world number 1, and now we're sitting here talking about all of these other people, and he's sitting at 12-1, hasn't moved a bit. Months ago, he was the face of golf, not just PGA Tour, Live, anything, the face of golf.
A year ago, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was saying he was never going to go to the Live. He was very happy on the PGA Tour that he wins the Masters. So, okay, hey, I won the Masters. I get to play the Masters the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. I got some exemptions into a few other things, and I've got $300 million. I guess I'll go to the Live. But I don't know how motivated you can stay. I mean, look at Dustin Johnson. He's basically checked out.
Yeah.
And to be fair, they're not on the Golf Channel. They're not on ESPN. You don't ever hear about the Live. So they've kind of gone by the wayside. And that's got to hurt these guys a little bit, right? I mean, they're professional athletes and entertainers.
Yeah.
And Rahm, don't know how much he's working out and practicing anymore. He does lead the Live in birdies per round. He averages just over 5 birdies per round, but he must have a lot of bogeys in there too if he's not winning.
Yeah, leading in birdies and not winning is not a good combo.
Well, the guy we've got to talk to as we're talking about the top 5 or top 6 players in the field is Scotty Scheffler. I mean, the dude is unbelievable. He went back-to-back. Then he lost on the 18th hole, on the 72nd hole, actually, when he missed a short putt, the only time he didn't win out of his last 5 tournaments, and he finished second. Then he comes back and wins the Masters in a glowing fashion. It was kind of boring. I mean, he just marched through the field. And then he goes,
good word.
And then last week, and then he wins the week after in the RBC, right? And so he wins 4 out of his last 5. Never in doubt the way the guy's drilling the ball right now. He's putting. They said he had putting issues, but I'd love to have the putting issues this guy has. He makes everything.
Yeah.
And he's your favorite. And he's a very low favorite, 7-2 or 3.5 to 1. Those are Tiger-like favorite numbers. Nobody's been that low since Tiger, and well deserved.
Yeah.
Right. He's number one on the PGA Tour on front nine scoring. He's number one on the PGA Tour on back nine scoring. He's number one on tour on Sunday scoring. He's number one on tour on par 5 scoring. He's number one on tour on par 4 scoring. And the list goes on and on and on. Greens and regulation, blah, blah, blah. The guy's just amazing. So,
yeah. I mean, I couldn't speak more highly about Scotty Scheffler just like you are as well. I mean, this is a guy that we're talking about that in strokes gained, right? And stats guy here, just like you are too. He leads in strokes gained in every category except for around the green and putting. And in those, he's 5th in 90 something, right? If you're around middle of the field for being a good putter and you lead everything else, that's a great just combination of just a phenomenal Tiger-like golfer.
Yeah. Some tournaments, it's all about putting. The Masters being one. You've got to be able to make putts. You got to make putts at every tournament. Don't get me wrong when I say that. You got to make putts at every tournament. And these guys are going 20 under every single week. But in the big ones, the majors, you don't see guys going 20 under for a reason. The greens are very difficult. You're hoping to 2-putt and get out of there.
Yeah.
You're not trying to make the 40-footers like you do on if you're playing at the Wells Fargo, you're trying to bomb them in, but you're not trying to do that at the PGA. You're trying to get it close, get me out of here and get me to the next hole where I can make a par. So Scheffler's, he's clearly the favorite. He's hitting the ball great. Now, he did take off the last 3 weeks because his wife had a baby.
Yeah.
So you're not a father. I am. I know you don't sleep a whole lot after you had a new baby, so I don't know how much he's sleeping. I'm sure they have someone helping them. But at the end of the day, you just don't sleep when you have a new baby. So I'm hoping that's not going to affect him.
I don't think it will. Again, not speaking from a parent standpoint at all, but it's just from a golf standpoint strictly in that. Scotty's done things without sleep that it's almost not quite Tiger-like, obviously, but like you kind of get that idea of it, right? You just mentioned 7-2. Those are Tiger-like odds.
Yeah.
Goes to win the Masters, makes it look boring, makes Augusta National boring, and then instead of going to New York and doing all the late night talk shows, says no, I want to do my commitment to RBC Heritage, and then wins that.
Yeah.
And I think whether it's sleep, lack of sleep, he's definitely in there.
He is considered one of the nicest guys on the tour, but he's a killer.
Yeah.
When he gets in the lead, he's not giving it up. And everybody knows it. Just like when Tiger had the lead, they just fold all around him. Like, it's amazing how some of these guys have that. Now, when we talk about Tiger, the thing that's so great about Tiger was that he did it for so long. Like, Spieth was doing what Scheffler's doing now for 16, 18 months.
Yeah.
Right? And Jason Day did it for about 12 months. But Scheffler's now done it for 2 years. How long can he keep it going? Life changes, getting married, having babies. Tiger just kept going and going and going. But right now, Scheffler is playing at a Tiger-like pace. Let's see if he keeps up this weekend. So we just ticked off the top 3 without mentioning Rory, who's 1, 2, or 3, right? So Rory wins last week in going away fashion. Him and Xander tied at the turn, and he wins by 5. After double bogeying the 18th hole or 72nd hole, so he should have won by 7 or more.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Just a little aside, I went out to go do a couple clinics that morning, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Xander and Rory McIlroy are tied. It's gonna be a fun, leading up to the final day for everything. Go out, teach, do all my normal PGA stuff. Come back in, and then I'm not kidding. The look when I came in to the golf shop just to kind of check on everything, that I saw that Rory was up by 7 or 8. Right. I'm just like looking around, like what's happening? Did I look at the right tournament?
Yeah, man. He's always he's how great a ball striker Scheffler is, but Rory's 1A if he's not tied with Scheffler. Rory's problem is, and over the last 10 years, is he hasn't been able to make a big putt in a big tournament. As you recall, at the Open Championship a couple years ago against Cameron Smith, he hits the final 18 greens in a row and 2 putts, every one of them, and just could not get a putt to drop. Guys all around the world would hope they could do that, but you can't do it in the final round of a major. You got to make some putts. And Rory just hasn't been able to make them in the big tournaments, but he makes them all the time when he's playing in just, a standard tournament. So winning 2 in a row, he just won with Shane Lowry as his partner down at the Zurich. I don't know if you watched that or not, but coming down the stretch, Lowry was hitting the ball everywhere. He was hitting the ball in the stands. He was hitting the water,
It's not good.
And every time he made a mistake, Rory came back to save him. In fact, on the 18th hole or the 72nd hole of the tournament, before they went into a playoff, Lowry put Rory in some weird grass off the side of the green, short-sided him. And the announcer's like, I don't know if he's going to go high. I don't know if he's going to go low. What's he going to do? And he stuffed it like a foot.
Yeah.
So Rory's back.
Yeah, he is.
And he needs to win. He really wants to win. And he wants to win a major. He hasn't won one since 2014. He's got 2 PGAs, so this would be a third one for him.
Yes, and I think this is a really good opportunity for him. When we get more into fun little stats and everything about that, we'll talk more in depth on it. But the big thing with Rory and what I like about him coming back to Valhalla, it's a course that he, in 2014, he won the PGA at.
Yep.
So it's a course he's familiar at, that he knows how to play. Out of weird fun stat about, the PGA, the last 18 champions, 3 of them won the tournament prior.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, you have a 1 in 6 chance. And if you're Rory McIlroy, arguably still one of the top 3 players on planet Earth right now, including Tiger, I still think this is a really good opportunity for him to get back in and hopefully get that next major.
See, that's a great stat. They won the previous week or maybe the previous start.
Yeah.
So that leaves Koepka. He won his previous start.
Yep.
Rory won his previous start. And Scheffler won his previous start. So if one of those 3 win, that stat's going to go.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those, you do the research and you're looking, you want to make sure that we're right here for all the people here gambling and everything.
Yeah.
And I see that, I'm like, really?
That's a great stat. He did some good homework on that one. So Rory's right there. He's 12-1. I mean, if I was betting a horse race and the favorite is a clear favorite at 3-1, but everybody else is backed up at 10 and 12 and 14 and 20, you got to take a look at him. The favorite doesn't win every single time. And as good as Scotty Scheffler's playing and as good as Tiger played, didn't win every time, right? And there's other bets you can get involved in. You can get in who's going to finish in the top 5, who's going to finish in the top 10. I got to think Rory's got a shot to be in the top 5. That's one of the options that's a bet that I would make. I'd make the same bet with Scheffler. You're going to lay a little bit to get there, but those are 2 guys that are probably going to be there, along with Xander Schauffele, who's a guy who's going to potentially be there. We'll get to him in a moment. But the guy I wanted to talk a little bit about is the guy who's trying to get his Grand Slam. There's only been 4 Grand Slams in the history of golf. Hogan, Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, and 2 guys that can get it right now.
Yep.
Is Rory. Can't get it at the PGA. He has to get it at the Masters. But Jordan Spieth. And Jordan Spieth has had 8 shots in a row to try and get this thing, and he needs a shot at, and he's 50-1.
Yeah.
So he's hitting the ball everywhere.
I mean, that's something that, kind of like how we talked about the Masters, right? Does Tiger make the cut? Yeah, you put $20 down on that. Just why not, right?
Sure.
This is for the PGA. This is the PGA Championship version of that. Jordan Spieth is just one of those people, like you said, if there was an 18-month, almost 2-3 year span where Jordan Spieth could not be stopped because of his putting.
Yep.
And I think that that glamour kind of never went away, at least for me. So when I see Jordan Spieth at 50-1, I'd put some money down on that. I mean, I want to see him do well, get that Grand Slam, add his name to the list of.
It's something to root for. Give him $10. If you're just not a big player, you get $500 if he were to sneak in. But more importantly, you get to cheer him down the stretch if he's in it and making a run at it. And he can make a run at it. He tends to get discouraged. He misses a couple of putts and he kind of loses it for a few holes, and he'll make some doubles. And as we talked about during the Masters show, we had a scorecard with 7s and 6s and a lot of big numbers on it. So. But here's a guy that's got a shot at the Grand Slam, and no one's even talking about him. No one's even talking about him, and he's got as good as anybody. He's a pro that plays really strong golf. When he gets hot, he is super hot, but he just hit the ball everywhere. This isn't a golf course where you can hit the ball everywhere.
No.
You can do that at the Masters. You can hit the ball anywhere at the Masters, but they changed the grass at this golf course. I mentioned that earlier. It was in my notes. I don't know if I mentioned it, but they changed the grass in 21 to that Zion grass, which is not as many chemicals, not as much water. It's super fast. It's almost like playing a European golf course. The ball rolls out. So you've got to hit fairways. And there's some guys we're going to talk about that I think have a real good opportunity because of that. This is a very hit the fairway golf course. If you're in the rough here, it's not a bomber. A bomber's not going to win. Brandon Chambly, check him off my list. He doesn't have a chance in this golf tournament. The guys that are bombing it aren't going to have a chance in this golf course. Here's a guy that's got a top in the top 5, Ludvig Åberg, the Swedish phenom. You loved him at the Masters. He was a high number at the Masters, and you convinced me. He ended up finishing 2nd at the Masters. He does not have a win this year, but he does have 5 top 10 finishes, which is pretty impressive. with the finish second at the Masters, 8th at the Players. This guy's the real deal. You know, he's 24 years old. You keep thinking he's really young because you never heard him before, but he played, you know, college, and then he became pro. And he played in the Ryder Cup when he had never even won a PGA or European event, and he was unbelievable in the Ryder Cup. And now he's right there, even though he hasn't won this year. You like him.
I do. I don't know if I like him to win this week, just because, like you had said, right, this is one of those courses that's really going to test every aspect of your game. And I really do think that he's going to be a big success on the course here in the next couple of years. I just don't know if the PGA is going to be that one where he cements it. You know, I mean, most of the people, in fact, you know, if you look back 5 of the past 6, the past winners have either already won a major or they were on their way to win a major, circa Colin Morikawa in 2020.
Yeah.
Right? He hasn't cracked that seal yet of how to win on the PGA Tour. When he does that, though, it's going to be crazy.
Tough to stop him. Well,
Yeah.
You mentioned Morikawa. I mean, I'm in my notes to talk about later when you just said 5 of the last 6, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, Morikawa was the one that got there because he won in San Francisco a couple of years ago. All right, let's round out the top 6, and then we're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about the value play in the middle of the field. The guy that we haven't talked much about is Mr. Runner-Up.
Yes.
Xander Schauffele. The guy is great. He's fantastic. He's an Olympian. He plays fantastic golf until Sunday. He just cannot bring it home on Sunday to run away with a tournament. He needs to put one away by a bunch to get. He did that a couple of times last year, but they weren't the big tournaments, right? He can win like the Wells Fargo or whatever, the Zurichs, but he's got to win one of these big majors. And I'm getting tired of betting him. I bet this guy for
me both.
Yeah, for the last 8 years. I mean, I keep laying my money down on the guy, and he's there on Saturday, and all of a sudden he disappears late Saturday, and you get to see his You know, you got a guy. You know, what's the most frustrating thing about betting golf is you got a guy that's near the top of the leaderboard, and he starts out with a bogey or a double bogey or a good number on any one of the first 2 or 3 holes. You never see him again.
Yeah.
The rest of the day, they don't put him on.
Nope. No, the production team knows. They're like, oh, this guy doubled. Nah, we're going literally anywhere else. And it's unfortunate because Xander's exactly like that. Like you said, right? He is the best 54-hole golfer you will ever see.
Yeah, he could dominate the live.
He would crush it there. But he's a guy that reminds me a lot of, like, do you remember like early teens, like Ricky Fowler, where he was the best 70-hole golfer ever?
Right.
Like Xander's becoming that now. Yeah. And I don't want him to do that. I want him to succeed.
I like him. I think he's a fan favorite. A lot of people like him. Here's some of the stats on this guy, though. And I was just kind of dogging him a little bit when I said he doesn't bring him home. But if you want to bet him to finish in the top 5 or top 10, he has 58 top 10s of 174 official events. That shows how good he is, how competitive he is, and he's right there all the time. So he's not just been able to be, a strong player sometimes. He's a strong player all the time. Can he win? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to put much down on him this time, but I am going to bet it that he's going to finish in the top 5.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the real value in the field, and then we've got some matchups head-to-head, and we've got a special guest going to join us with some of the best bets. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the South Point PGA Golf Show. Hi, everybody. I'm Barry Phillips, and joining me is CJ Schmid. We're talking about the top 5 or 6 in the field, but there's a lot of value in the rest of the field, CJ, and that's what we're going to get into next. The PGA tournament has historically had upsets and guys you've never heard of that have been there before. We mentioned a little bit earlier in the show that John Daly won there in 91 as the last guy in. He was an alternate, drove all night to get there. Mickelson won as a 50-year-old. Sean McKeel won. Never heard from him again or before. And he'll be playing in the field, by the way. There's just some great stories coming out of it. Jeff Sluman won the PGA. And there's some other players that are very well-known players, but had not won majors. Paul Azinger was one of them that won. Davis Love III, he was another guy that won the PGA. Guys that had ties to the PGA. Davis Love's father, obviously, was a guy that was a longtime player on the PGA Tour and a PGA professional, and he won. So who's going to be that guy this year that's going to come out of this field, potentially make something happen? And there's a lot of them that potentially can make it happen. There's some great finishes that have happened at this golf tournament. As we mentioned, Tigers play with Bob May. There's been some playoffs. But the big story, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, was Jordan Spieth as a guy that's trying to win his Grand Slam. One of the names that everybody's talking about this week, getting all the publicity, is Justin Thomas, because it's his backyard. He grew up right there in Louisville, Kentucky. And although he was during an interview on the Golf Channel saying he only played it a handful of times in the last couple of years. He played a lot when he was younger, and he's a pretty good value. I think he's at 40-1. So Justin Thomas, who's not had a very good year, by the way, and hasn't had a very good 2 years. He hasn't won since the 2022 PGA Championship.
That's right.
The last time he won. So maybe it's time for him to get out of the Schmid and make it happen.
There's the big thing with Justin Thomas. I don't know if you follow him on Instagram or anything like that, but he always, at the end of every year, he has this little list on his notes app of saying, like, these are my goals this year, and I'm going to do these things. It's a really good way to keep yourself accountable. Not just, it's fun as fans to see it, but, as also, teaching, and having students be accountable and hold themselves like that. It's awesome. And you see a lot of, instead of green checkmark emojis, you see a lot of red X's the last couple of years with Justin. I do like him being back in his home state, though, in Kentucky, and just really, being a good value pick to kind of get back on track.
Yeah. He opened at 30. He's up to 40 now here at the South Point. So, or opened at 25, and he's up to 35 now. Jordan Spieth, his best friend, opened at 40, and he's up to 50. We talked about Jordan a little bit earlier. But, anytime you get a horse at 40-1, that's won before and won, at a golf course that they know or been there. You gotta like Jordan Spieth just a little bit, just because of the fact that he won on this particular course. A guy way up on the top of the page that's kind of dropped down. He opened a little bit lower, and now he's up to 30-1. Is Victor Hovland, everybody's favorite golfer. This guy smiles if he finishes last, if he misses the cut, if he wins. You don't know.
Yeah,
he's just a happy guy from out there playing golf, and he loves it. He loves to play golf. He's not a live type guy at all. I think he just loves and lives to play golf. And at 30-1, he's one of the guys that I kind of like in my value picks.
Yeah, that's a really fun value pick, honestly. I love Victor. He's got just a great demeanor about him. One of my favorite value picks, actually, that I have is Jason Day. He's actually been warming up a little bit. You start to see his name come up a little bit more in more recent tournaments. Opened up it was 75, and now he's at 50-1. I don't think he's gonna, run away with it, but you talk about, those long shots, those kind of random, getting back into the spotlight people.
Yep.
He's on my short list of, 2 or 3 people that I would pick to.
Well, obviously,
have a
other
shot.
people think that. I mean, bet down $20 down from 70 to 50. So I think a few people are loving that guy. Way back at the top of the list, but he's 40-1 is Patrick Cantlay.
Yeah.
Sometimes Chris and these bookmakers around town, I think they give you, false hope with these guys. I don't know if it's a trap or not, but here's Patrick Cantlay, opened at 30, hasn't got much action, so he's up to 40. 3 years ago, this guy would have been 10, right? Remember, he's one of the best putters on tour. He was killing everybody, and then just kind of has leveled off. He hasn't won in a while, but I think Patrick Cantlay is another value pick at 40-1.
That's a solid value pick also. I got to have a softie for my fellow LA guys, but, I think I didn't see him going up to 40-1. If I saw a 30-1, I'd be like, that sounds about right with how he's been playing recently.
Yep.
Like you said, phenomenal putter, has those, hot streaks and cold streaks, but still, like you said, recently a really good golfer.
Yeah, he's not one that the media follows a whole lot. He's kind of a stoic guy out there, doesn't talk a whole lot or do anything. He just plays golf. And so he doesn't have the fanfare that a lot of guys have, but he could easily win this tournament and have no problem winning it and going head to head with Scotty down the stretch, or with Rahm, or any of these guys down the stretch. Clicking down the list, and I'm saying we're looking at the value picks right now, but these guys are all in the top 15, top 20, and there's so much value there.
Right.
Cameron Smith. Here's a guy that if he had not gone to the Live, he could be number one in the world. He'd be right there with Scheffler, right? He's battled with Scheffler many times, and he won the British Open, then jumped to the Live for, I think he got 200 million or some crazy number. He's open 30. He's still 30. This guy has a complete game. He's got it all. The only thing he doesn't have is a haircut. He's got that mullet. Ridiculous. But he can play golf.
It's bad. It's bad. Like, I have long hair. Like, don't get me wrong. It's bad. Golf game, phenomenal. Hairstyle, I mean, I know it's the hip thing with some of the kids. Not my thing.
So Cameron Smith is a guy that outdueled Rory at the 2022 British Open. Or it was 22 British Open, when Rory hit 18 greens in a row, and Smith made a couple of bombs on the par fives to knock him off and beat him by a stroke. And I just don't, what do we do about this Live? How do we judge? How do you rate these guys to bet them? Because you don't know what they're doing. They're playing 54 holes, which, Greg Norman was a 54-hole golfer. That's probably why they play 54 holes. The guy couldn't win when he went to 72. But they play 54, and there's a huge difference. And we just saw last year, Koepka led the Masters for 3 rounds, didn't win it. I mean, you've got to play all 72 holes. Physically, it's a challenge to play those other 16 holes and walk. It's mentally a challenge to make things happen. And I can't get behind the live players in the betting category to play them as favorites or to put a big wager on them, even though I know how good they are. Cameron Smith was my favorite. I had him when he beat Rory.
Yeah.
I had him at 25-1, and it was a phenomenal number, and it was a great win. Although, you know, I was hoping Rory didn't make any putts that day either, and I was able to get there. But then he left, and now you hear from, you don't know what they're doing. Are they practicing? Are they not? If you watch that TV show Full Swing, those guys, they're on that show like, well, the reason I signed up to play less golf.
Yep.
I want to spend more time with my family.
Love that.
How do you bet a guy that wants to play less golf?
Yeah, it's like I love the second part of that,
Yeah.
right? Obviously, we want to spend time with family.
Sure.
Like, we'll never downplay that. But if your job is to play professional golf and you want to play less golf, that still kind of throws me off.
Yeah.
And these are phenomenal golfers. They will run laps around us at our local, golf course every day of the week. But Valhalla, they extended the course. It's only by 150 yards. They added that new grass that you're talking about.
Yep.
It's hard to get into consistent golf shape. The golf season's a grind, and it's hard to be in consistent golf shape when you're only playing. Liv's had like maybe 6 to 8 tournaments a year.
Mhm.
I looked it up before coming in here and I forgot. And you're only playing 54 holes, and there's travel because you're traveling all over the world.
Yeah.
So the fatigue's there, and they're not in golf shape like some of these other guys that you're mentioning are good value picks that seem like they're really good value picks because they're playing on the PGA Tour, the Cantlays of the world, right?
Yeah.
The Morikawas.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, as a retired guy, I can't get enough golf, and I don't get paid $200 million to play. So I can't get in there. I can't get on their bandwagon if that's a great thing to give me all this money to not play. You just mentioned Colin Morikawa. He's my top pick. He's the guy that I think is right for this golf course. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later when we get to best bets, but I kind of let the cat out of the bag. This guy is a fairway hitting machine, and he's an average putter, which is all you need to be to win the PGA. You just got to make a lot of pars.
Yes.
Right? Make a lot of pars. And then you got to make birdies on the par fives. You got to get up and down on the par threes. This guy can do it. The Morikawa opened at 25. He's still at 25. I just think Colin Morikawa is a real deal for this tournament.
yeah, I love that. And like you said, we'll talk more about it in best bets. I love that pick too. I think Colin's got the game for your typical PGA Championship. Smart, consistent golf that just, you don't go too astray from the fairway. You don't try to do anything flashy. You just play to your strengths and you try to limit your weaknesses.
And he's won twice, 2 majors. He's won the PGA and he's won the U.S. Open, arguably the 2 hardest ones to win.
Yes.
Because you have to hit the ball straight. You got to keep the ball in play. Where, the Open Championship, you can hit the ball a lot of places over there across the pond. And the Masters, you can hit it anywhere as long as you can putt. That's a big story. So Morikawa is another one of the values at 25-1. I mean, it's just pretty good number there. We talked about Spieth, Thomas. We kind of ran out the top 20 with a couple of guys that we really have talked to much about today. Tony Finau, who another guy everybody loves. Like he's one of your favorite players to watch play. I don't know what's going on with Tony Finau because he hasn't been competitive this year for the most part. He's just there.
Mm-hmm.
He's usually on the first page or down on the first page of the leaderboard, but very rarely competing to win.
Yeah, and Finau, before he had that little, spurt, a few months back where he was just starting to like win or contend and everything.
Last year, right at the end of the year at FedEx Cup, he started getting hot.
Yep.
He's gone from 40-1 to 60-1. No interest in Tony Finau from the betting public.
I'd stay away from that. That's the smart pick. I love Tony Finau to death, but I think that's a smart pick.
Okay, now here's a guy who gets a lot of publicity because he's all over Instagram, Max Homa. Max Homa went from 35 down to 25. He's on Instagram a lot. He's on social media. He talks a lot. He has a great interview, if you look that up online at the Golf Channel, where he was talking about playing with Tiger and some of the experiences he's had. Homa had a run at it at the Masters. You may recall he was one of my best bets for the Masters, and he was in it on the back 9 on Sunday. He got to 12. He hit it long, hit a sprinkler. I think he hit that sprinkler box because the ball bounded into the bushes above 12. It looked like it was just going to be on the back of the green. It took a huge bounce. They never really said on the broadcast if it hit the actual sprinkler there or not, but it bounced into the bushes. He had to take a drop. He didn't make it a double on the par 3. and he disappeared, and you never saw him again the rest of the broadcast. Max Homa was competing. Now, he has not won a major, and he tends to win, the Barclay Championship and all the less than majors. He does really well in the Zurichs of the world, but he doesn't win the majors, although he's a guy that they keep predicting that he's going to be one of the guys that steps up. Can he do it?
I'm one of those guys that also predicts that he'll do it. I don't know, we've talked about for a lot of these people, it's hard to predict the PGA Championship, who's going to win. I do like Max Homa, though. This is a guy that, again, for his strengths, right, may not have the best short game in the world. Maybe the putting, maybe a little miss here or there. Sometimes the ball striking's not super great, like you mentioned. They don't have sprinkler heads in the 661 where Max and I are from. But when his game is on, he is a top 5, top 10 golfer in the world, right? He's a top 1 Twitter follow, of course, or X follow now. But once he figures out how to break that kind of break the stage on the majors, he's going to be a force to reckon with.
Yeah, he's a bulldog. He's a bulldog. There's a group of guys that are kind of in that group that haven't busted through, that are right there, that seem like they're going to be there. Sam Burns, Tom Hogue, Max Homa. Those guys are right there. Matthew Wolff left and went to live, but he was one of that group of guys that were all under 30 that were going to be, right there. But I like him a lot and think he'll be competitive. Matthew Fitzpatrick is next on the list. He opened at 35. He's up to 45. U.S. Open winner. Matthew Fitzpatrick was very competitive and a guy that led, if not the leader, he's one of the leaders on the Ryder Cup team for Europe. A great player, and a lot of great things being said about him over the last 2 years. But he's kind of hasn't won this year and hasn't really competed much this year. But he's a guy that hits the ball really straight and can be there. He's got that weird low hand chipping. Do you teach that low hand chipping? If you do, maybe I should take a lesson.
I try not to. I try to be open to everything. I don't want to pigeonhole myself into one style, but it is kind of goofy to see that. But whatever works for anybody. Whatever. If low chipping gets him that kind of success that he does, I mean, this guy, we have notes here, and he would just laugh at all the notes that we have because this is just minimal compared to what he does on a normal round.
Right.
So
I've seen that, the picture of his book. He's written down every shot he's ever taken since he was 18 years old or something. Every shot. Yeah, it's insane. Well, just go down. I'm going to check a couple of names off here and see if you like or dislike them, or I'll give you my opinion as well. There is a whole right side of the board that I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on, but there's so much value on the left side of the board here. Tyrell Hatton, he went to the Live. Was on the board a little while at the Masters, but disappeared, so you never see him. He's on the Live. DeChambeau, I mentioned earlier, no interest in him because he's a bomber. I don't see him playing well at this course. I'll probably get snake bit because of that, but he opened at 30. He's down to 25. Jason Day, you talked about. Will Zalatoris. Here's a guy that shows up at every major on the first page, top of the leaderboard. Last week he withdrew with bad back. He's had 2 back surgeries now. So don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah, and we touched on this a little bit during the Masters show, right? He had that whole swing change because of these back issues. And, to see him withdraw because of that similar, kind of medical problem going on, it's hard to see, not just, as a golf fan, but just even as a bettor, because you want to see a guy that can play well, do well, and win you money. But if he's withdrawing because, he doesn't know what his back's going to feel like anytime and he's going through a swing change, you want to stay away from that.
Here's a guy you mentioned earlier, Ricky Fowler. 100 to 1.
Yeah, that's all we're going to talk about him.
Disappeared.
The only 2 people I really see on the right side that I just want to mention really quick. I think it's cool to see Michael Block, the PGA pro out of SoCal coming back on there at 1,000 to 1. Not somebody you're going to pick to win, but it's just cool to see that he's
nice
on there.
To see his name.
My big value pick though is actually going to be a guy called Eric Van Rooyen. South African, opens up at 200 to 1. That's one where if you just want to just throw $10 down just to see if this is the year where there's an upset that's happening, this would be my guy. He's jumped all the way from strokes gained total.
Has the ponytail, or
he's the taller guy. He's got the big hat. Yeah, I think he's got the ponytail now.
The man bun. I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Eric Van Rooyen.
Yeah, really solid golfer. Top 20 in strokes gained total. Just a good under the radar pick. If I'm going to the book right after this, I'm gonna throw 10 on him just to see.
Just for fun.
Fun.
Chris needs to pay the bills around here. I do want to mention 2 more guys before we go out of this segment. Is Tommy Fleetwood is now 33 years old, has not won in the U.S. Seems like the guy's right there all the time. They call him Fairway Jesus, but he just hasn't won. Even he hasn't even won like the nothing.
No.
He's won in Europe. He hasn't won over here. Can he win a major?
I want to see him win in the States first. I know he can win a major, but I want to see him win in the States first.
Well, the public loves him. He was bet down from 50 down to 30.
Mm-hmm.
But he's one of those guys, he's very likable. You
Yep.
see him, and he'll throw a 62 or 63 on the board one of the 4 rounds in this tournament.
Oh, if you see a sub 65 from Tommy Fleetwood and you're shocked, you're not following.
Yeah, and then 72,
Yep.
and then it's out.
There it is. There it is.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I've got a special guest to give some best bets. We're going to go through the matchups, and there's quite a few of them. We'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back to the South Point Studios and the home of the PGA Golf Show. And joining us is Vinny Magulio, or how do you say your last name? There's no G in it. Vinny Magulio.
First of all, he is silent. It's Mayulo.
And
let me just,
I apologize.
first of all, you invited me on, which is a beautiful thing. You told me I had a caddy. I got to carry my own clubs. It's 95 outside. I'm
No,
dying.
I didn't say you had a caddy. I said you had to caddy for me.
No, can we roll it? Hold on a second. Where's Stallworth? He's supposed to...
Stallworth was supposed to caddy for both of us.
Wait, there's caddies involved?
He was
I
gonna-
just found out about this.
Yeah, we're gonna get Steve Stallworth here to caddy. He didn't show. Steve's
He probably found out.
Steve's loaded with money right now. I don't know if you guys know who Steve
Hello,
Stallworth
boys.
is. He's a member. He's a member at Canyon Gate. Last week he won 2 closest to the pins. I said, "You must be playing a lot of golf, Steve. I wonder if the boss knows what's going on with you."
He might be on the course right now.
Right, what is today? He might be out playing today. He's there on Friday for sure when the Skins game's on. He always tells you he can't make it. Then the last minute he shows up. How you doing, Vinny? Good to see
Good
you.
to be with you guys.
I haven't
A lot
seen
of
you since
fun.
football season. I wish I saw you more often.
It's been a minute, my friend. Yeah, I know. We'll talk to Chrissy about putting together another poker game.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing your clubs in. And
Yeah.
And now I want to see the clubs.
we're gonna talk.
Those
a little
actually
golf.
aren't mine. I think they were
whoever they are, I'm gonna golf there
on
tomorrow.
loan to Frank Nicotero. But
Well, we played. We've been talking a lot of golf, Vinny. I don't know
Yeah.
if you caught it in the studio over there. It's kind of funny. We've gone 45 minutes in the show yet. We haven't mentioned one golfer named Tiger Woods.
yeah, that's
How do we leave Tiger Woods out of the conversation, Vinny?
it's hard to, right, when you think about it, especially from our side of the counter, because Tiger, he killed us for so many years.
Right.
It's interesting when Tiger in his prime, and you look at the prices on the future book. There were times when Tiger got down to less than 2 to 1, and it just didn't matter. And of course, it was an investment. It wasn't taking a shot.
Yeah. Right.
But it's hard to imagine it having a major discussion without him, right? And but look, I thought he was a warrior at Augusta. The way he battled. Of course, he made the cut and everything. But this is a whole different set of circumstances. He's such a thing about Augusta. As you guys know, that's so much different. It's there every year. So the familiarity with it. I don't think they've been to Valhalla here since 2014.
Yeah,
So
10 years.
the different the differences are amazing, and I think that's part of the father time aspect catching up with
When
Tiger.
when we mentioned Tiger, when I've been betting golf a long time, and I used to talk to Chris about it all the time, but now you can bet top 5 and you can bet top 10.
Yeah.
Back then you couldn't. And I was on Chris all the time saying, Chris, how do you not let me bet second place? Because I could pick second, but everyone's picking Tiger to win, and he's going to win. We all know he's going to win. Why would I bet any money on anybody else? Because there was no way to bet an exacta. I would love to have been able to bet an exacta with Tiger.
It's a great point that you bring up. In golf, part of that is the evolution of the way golf has evolved from a betting perspective. I mean, Barry, you bring up a good point. Back then, the Masters was pretty much the only golf tournament that we booked. And we put it up, maybe at the, in, let's say April, in March. Now the Masters is up just like other future books. And because it's always at Augusta, it goes up 8 to 12 months in advance. And that's one of the reasons why that it has the highest handle of all the majors. I think one of the things that really benefited the PGA was when they moved it to this time of year, because when it was previously in August, it's going up against exhibition football, and by then everybody's ready for football, right? And we know even exhibition, preseason football is an enormously popular with bettors. It was going up against baseball and the dog days and the stretch drive for baseball. So it was always kind of an afterthought, but I think it was a brilliant move putting it, moving it to here. I would so ranking wise, from a handle perspective, no real stretch that it's the Masters. Then by the U.S. Open, the British and the PGA. PGA has always been number 4 in terms of handle, but it's certainly climbed and much closer to the British Open and the U.S. Open by virtue of this move to.
Well, we know Tiger changed golf, but golf betting has really kicked off now in the last 5-7 years versus even when Tiger was. I mean, there just wasn't that much action. It was Tiger or nothing, but now there's so many more options. You're getting a lot more action written on it, right?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I mean, anytime you can have props, and we sat there and thought to ourselves, listen, the way we do it in other sports, where we offer prop, we've got the NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs going on right now, and there's props on them by game. Even how about Caitlin? There's props on Caitlin Clark tonight, kicking off the WNBA season. Yeah. So when we started to think about, well, listen, golf is so popular. How do we add to it and make it more interesting for, let's say, the Thursday and Friday, especially, right? Why not? So head-to-heads. And and we've got a list of head-to-heads. Now, there are full tournament head-to-heads, which is the sheet you guys have. But then there are going to be daily head-to-heads as well to take advantage of, Barry.
Yeah, I love them. And I love those because you get a guy who makes the cut.
Yeah.
But he's not in it. Come Sunday, he's playing. He's freewheeling. And you can get that value on that guy that's going against another guy that's, struggling, trying to make a bigger check and really working on it where, hey, I'm getting the day over with. I'm going to go out and try and make some birdies. So I do love betting matchups. And speaking of that, there's some really good ones right on the board. We just talked about Tiger against Phil. That's a great little matchup. Tiger is plus 125 and Phil is minus $1.45. And this is the first matchup for the full matchup on the board. And, it's just great to have the ticket, right? Don't you just get the ticket? Well, you have the ticket. Like I took Tiger plus 125.
Plus a quarter, right? You're framed that.
Yes, I was about to say, I'm not trying to cash it. I'm not trying to cash it. I just want to put it on the wall. Yeah. There's one of the things that I bet over the years. By the way, who do you like in that one? If Phil is Tiger.
Oh no, I like Tiger for sure.
Tiger. How about you, Vinny? You like Tiger?
Well, I think so. Listen, to me, it's not about who I like, who we need.
Yeah, there you go.
On our side of the,
You're on the wrong side of the counter for us.
But I have to tell you, in all seriousness, so how do you pass up a plus price on Tiger Woods? Right? I mean, he's they're both familiar with Valhalla too. Both of these guys and they're veterans and everything. But there's just there's that sentimental aspect to Tiger these days, and I think there's more sentiment for him than for Phil. So, but actually, this price hasn't moved, so there's two-way action there.
When we had the Masters show, I think you gave out more winners than I did. We did some heads. I won some of the head-ups, but I didn't obviously have the winner because I had Matsuyama as my number 1 pick. But my biggest bet I had in the entire tournament was Tiger to make the cut. It was 2-1.
Yes.
So I got all my money back just because Tiger made the cut at the Masters.
And what's great is, so for us, okay, we've got more wagering options. For you as bettors, you're still in it. During the course of the weekend, whether it's a prop at the a pre-flop, if you will, a pre-tournament or during the tournament, and getting back to Tiger as well. I have to tell you, there's always sentimental bets on Tiger now for a few. So let's say somebody's got $200 and they're going to, sprinkle it on some futures. There's always going to be they're always going to have a $10 or a $20 bet on Tiger.
Sure.
For just in case, just because, right?
100 to 1.
That's me. 100 to 1. That's me. 1,000%.
Yeah, so for all those years, he buried us. Guess what? You know what? That's okay because it also helped create. From our perspective, when you talk to, Chrissy and Jimmy and I, first of all, you can't cry about it. What it did was increase golf interest and golf betting, and it's only been escalating.
Yeah. Well, they're the first one on the board. It's just kind of interesting how you want to bet matchups because I can get Rory at 6-1 to win the whole thing.
Right.
Or I can get Rory to beat Scotty Scheffler. One guy, and I get the number 2 player in the world at plus 155. But
Well-
he's got to beat Scotty Scheffler though.
Plus 145 now. So
he's
so
down.
there's so your school of
Yeah.
thought has been popular. They did bet Rory. They took the 155. So Scheffler's now 65 and plus 45. Yeah. So to your point, that's been pretty popular.
Same thing with Koepka and Scheffler. I can get Koepka at 12-1, or I can get plus 240. Is it still 240 that move?
Plus 245. They bet. They believe it. They laid the price.
Scheffler.
With Scotty Scheffler, they laid almost 3-1, which I was a little surprised at on the head to head.
Koepka's defending champ.
And
He's defending champ and has won 3 PGA events and 5 majors. If he hadn't gone to the Live, Brooks Koepka would, be the man that everyone's talking about. Possibly. I mean, I don't know what would happen with Scheffler, but all of a sudden,
Good point.
he's not even in the conversation anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and now because of that move, there's that reason that, like you had mentioned, Scotty Scheffler being that much of a heavy favorite, because Scotty has now eased himself with really no issue at all into that role.
yeah. If Koepka, and there's been a couple of guys, I was watching quite a bit of the process of what's going on betting this over the last couple of days, and there's some guys that really think John Rahm can make a move and play well in this tournament, although he hasn't done anything since winning the Masters over a year ago. But you can get Rahm plus money in a couple of these matchups if you like John Rahm. You can get Brooks Koepka, who's defending champ, in almost every one of them. They don't believe in Brooks Koepka. He's plus 170 against Rory. He's plus 160 against Xander. There's just some, pretty good numbers there.
Koepka, we kind of went back and forth on the future book as well. 20-1 on the opener, got as low as 12, back up to 15. So even though there's a little bit of liability there too. So we'll look at not just how much is bet, but how many, what's the ticket count and things like that. So he got some interest there. Rory, even though he's short, but Rory did open at 15-1, so he's had a steady stream.
Well, he's won 2 of his he's won 2 in a row. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden he's back in the spotlight, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's been popular. I mean, and he was popular so far in this event at the betting counter.
CJ, any of the matchups you like?
I mean, it's maybe not a value pick. I really would be interested to see how the Max Homa Colin Morikawa matchup is. The Cal Golden Bear matchup there. Max Homa plus 120. Again, got to be a big fan of my boy, like I did, at the Masters event, Joaquin Niemann. On here, it's plus 105. Is that still accurate?
135 versus Max Homa.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have him at
minus. Wait, Morikawa against Homa or
no
which one?
Morikawa against Niemann. So I like that matchup.
That one's minus a quarter plus 105. Yeah, it hasn't moved.
Yeah. So that's the one I really like the most out of all these matchups for me that I would probably take in.
By the way, Homa's taking interest too in the future book. He opened at 35 and he's down to 25. So there's quite a little bit some interest in him in this event.
I like that, and I don't know if you like this or not, but I got to do the golf. My due diligence as the golfer. With Niemann, he's leading in live point standing. I did have to look that up. I can't watch it, but I did have to look it up.
Yeah,
and he's won twice, and he's only had one finish outside the top 10 on live this season. So that's why I'm big on him, especially in that Morikawa and Homa matchup.
Yeah, you liked Joaquin Newman at the Masters. You talked about him quite a bit, and I don't recall where he finished, but he was tearing up the live at that time. He's one of those guys that's enjoying the live experience and playing well over there.
Yeah.
Well, I think whether listen, there's some very strong opinions, obviously, on the live situation. But if you're going to either make prices like Chris and I do and Jimmy, on our side of the counter, or if you're going to handicap it, especially, listen, you have to pay attention to what's happening, right? I mean, it's whether you like it or not, or you agree with it or not, it's a factor, and it certainly comes in, right? The current form alone, you have to pay attention to.
Well, here's something to pay attention to. I just read this morning, Rory McIlroy, coming off of a win on Sunday, filed for a divorce on Monday. So the guys have bet down from 12-1 to 6-1, and on Monday before the PGA, he files for divorce. 7 years of marriage. That's got to play on you a little bit, right, Vinny?
I would think it's that's good intel. It's good to know. I don't know, but on the one hand, do you raise his odds or you just lower them because?
There it is.
I mean, what's Rory been doing?
Joke.
Do we have any Rory sightings? Do we have any? What's his?
Do you have a
what's his schedule
disclaimer
been?
that I didn't say that? Because I'm the one that usually says that.
What? I'd like to know what Rory's been doing this week, and has he been on the practice range or has he been doing some other?
At the attorney's office, figuring out how much money he's going to get to keep. But I mean, Can you imagine how expensive that divorce is going to be? That's make expensive.
I'd rather not think about that.
Oh my
That's a
gosh.
lot.
Probably Tiger like.
Yeah.
Well, we're running out of time, so it's time to go for best bets. Our buddy Steve Stallworth didn't show up, but Vinny's got a couple, I'm sure. But we'll start with you, CJ. Who do you like?
I think, and Vinny, you talked about it earlier. Whether you like it or not, you have to pay attention to live.
Mhm.
I think for me, my big pick that I really think has a really good shot. That isn't named Scotty Scheffler. I love the Scotty Scheffler pick, but we all do. I really like Brooks Koepka. I think he's got a really good opportunity, especially, at that 12-1 odd to really get good value, but still have that kind of, pizzazz to really play well in this kind of event that he trains for all year long. So I really like him. I still like Eric Van Rooyen as a big dark horse pick. And I will once again double down on Neiman being, at what was he at 33 or whatever to one it is now. So,
all right. Anything you want to throw in, Vinny?
Well, I think if you're looking at some long shots too, right? I mean, and these are long shots that have taken money, and I can understand Taylor Gooch. He's still 75-1. I mean, that's a pretty good price, and he'd probably get. I think if you're looking for a price, I think he's gonna be in a position to defend. I think he's gonna get through the first couple of days, and probably Sepp Straka. I mean, this guy's always seems to be.
I love that pick.
This guy just always seems to be lurking and be a contender.
Mm-hmm. Love both of those. Gooch is another guy. 2 years ago, he was being talked about as being a future number one top player.
Mhm.
Went to the Live. Never hear from the guy again. But there was a note. Local kid that was in this tournament, Taylor Montgomery, withdrew today, so he's out. He was listed at 300-1. He's been playing really good golf. Don't know if he had a chance to win it, but just so you know, he'll be on the sidelines. I've got a couple of plays. I'm going to start off with, I have a ticket on Rory already at 10-1.
Good for you.
I'm concerned about Rory and the divorce I just heard about. So I'm not going to give him as one of my best bets, but I'm just in full disclosure. I already had a ticket on him. I got him at 10 before he won these last two events. Here's the guys that I like with some real value. I like Wyndham Clark, U.S. Open winner last year. He's at 25-1. I love Colin Morikawa, 25-1. Another guy I've got a ticket on. I got him when he was at 30. He's been bet down from 35 to 25 here at the South Point. Matthew Fitzpatrick is getting no action at all. In fact, he's gone from 35 up to 45, but I like Matthew Fitzpatrick as value. And here's my real pick that I want to throw $10 on or $20 on, or a guy like you, CJ, with unlimited budget being single, $100 on.
I have that. That's awesome.
Russell Henley. You just mentioned 75. Russell Henley's 100-1. Russell Henley was like number 3 in scoring leading into the Masters, and is a guy that's way off the radar that is playing really good golf right now.
Good prices, guys. You did your shopping. That's well done.
Can we do a Van Rooyen Henley matchup? That's what I want to do.
There's enough of them on here. I'm sure you'll find something if you want to get on
If
it.
you guys want a little side action.
There it is.
Well, that's it for this year's PGA show. We'll be back for the U.S. Open and hopefully the British Open after that. Good luck, everybody. Remember now, money won is twice as nice as money earned.